Hi guys and welcome to another podcast episode. Today we're gonna talk about Korean beauty standards and how crazy they are in general and about us fans that consume the content. I feel like this is a really interesting topic to talk about because if you're into K-pop, you have probably noticed how much importance is given to appearance, especially when it comes to idols. And I don't mean this in a bad way. Obviously, idols are celebrities and their appearance is part of their job, but sometimes the standards they are expected to meet are just insane. Like there are so many things that are considered when it comes to someone's appearance, their weight, their skin, their facial features, literally everything. And the craziest part is that we as fans consume this content all the time. We're constantly seeing idols who look perfect, with perfect skin, perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect bodies, and obviously we know that a lot of that is makeup, styling, and lighting, and just the fact that they are celebrities. Even knowing that, it can still affect us because when you see this kind of image every single day, you can start thinking that this is what you are supposed to look like too. And there is nothing wrong with finding idols beautiful or admiring the way they look because obviously we can appreciate someone's beauty without wanting to look exactly like them. But it's important to remember that these standards are not realistic for everyone and honestly they shouldn't have to be. So first, let's talk about what Korean beauty standards actually are because I feel like sometimes people hear the term and immediately think that every single Korean person looks like an idol, which obviously isn't true. There are certain features that have traditionally been considered attractive in Korea, like having clear skin, a small face, bigger eyes, and certain facial proportions, but obviously that doesn't mean every Korean person wants to look like that or agrees with those standards. When you look at K-pop, you can definitely notice that some of these features are very common among idols. Another thing that is really interesting is how these standards have changed over time. Because if you compare older generations of K-pop to newer generations, you can definitely see difference in styling and what is considered attractive. And that's actually really important because it shows that beauty standards aren't some universal truth. What people consider beautiful can change depending on the time, the culture, and even the trends that are popular at that moment. Then there is also the difference between male and female idols. Female idols are often expected to fit a very specific type of beauty, while male idols also have their own standards that they are expected to meet. Obviously, these expectations can be different, but both can create a lot of pressure, and there is a difference between saying, I think this idol is beautiful, and saying, this idol needs to look like this to be considered beautiful. Because when idols are constantly being photographed and filmed, even something as normal as gaining a little weight or having acne can suddenly become something people feel entitled to comment on. And I don't think that's fair because idols are still human beings and they're allowed to have bad skin days, look tired, gain weight, lose weight, and just look like normal people sometimes. Social media also makes all of this even more complicated because now we don't just see idols when they are performing or in official photos. We see them everywhere, all the time. A lot of the content we see is professionally produced, edited, or filtered, so sometimes we're comparing ourselves to an image that was never really meant to represent reality. That's something we as fans need to be aware of because obviously there's nothing wrong with looking at an idol and thinking, wow, they're so pretty. I do that too, but admiring someone's appearance doesn't mean we have to use them as a standard for ourselves because we aren't just watching this content, we are actively consuming it. We like the pictures, we repost them, we make edits, we talk about visuals, and we constantly see people discussing how attractive certain idols are. Again, there is nothing wrong with that, but it's good to sometimes stop and think about how much importance we are putting on someone's appearance because sometimes we can accidentally reduce an idol to just being the pretty one when they're obviously so much more than that. This applies outside of K-pop too because unrealistic beauty standards exist everywhere. K-pop obviously didn't invent the idea of beauty standards, but because K-pop is such a visual industry and because fans consume so much content from their favorite idols, it can make those standards feel even more intense. At the end of the day, the solution isn't to stop appreciating beautiful idols or stop enjoying K-pop, of course. It's more about being conscious of what we're consuming. You can think an idol is gorgeous and still understand that they don't represent what every person should look like. And that's probably the most important things I wanted to talk about in this episode because beauty standards are always going to exist. Trends are going to change and there will be always people who fit certain standards more than others. But that doesn't mean we have to let those standards decide how we feel about ourselves. And especially as fans, we should be able to enjoy K-pop for what it is without turning someone's appearance into something we constantly compare ourselves to. Because at the end of the day, idols are people too, and being beautiful should never be the only thing that makes someone valuable. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.